Hello, it's me, Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
We have a new well from which wisdom emerges today, don't we, Jay?
Indeed we do.
Yay!
Today, we are talking to our new guest, never before on the pod, Dungeon Commandr.
Hello.
Hi!
So, Dungeon Commandr, why don't you tell our listening audience a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, I'm DC. I make tabletop games. I also do a lot of community management stuff in tabletop. And I stream sometimes as well.
And you run a pretty, I would have to say, a pretty engaging Twitter feed there.
What's that handle, Jay? Tell the people.
It's Dungeon Commandr, but not spelled how you'd expect it. It's spelled like Tumblr. The E is missing in Commandr.
Commandr.
Yeah, that's
There
it.
you go.
And we'll have links to that, of course. We'll link to that in the old Twitter feed as usual, as per standard.
Twitter via Twitter. That's a lot of Twitters.
It's a Twitterception.
Oh no, not again.
Yeah. Bomb.
Accurate.
So generally on the show, we answer questions, and we have a whole slew of them here today for Dungeon Commandr, taking maximum opportunity to pick the brain of our guest that is, as usual, more intelligent than we are, more skilled in these areas, in these realms.
I mean, it's like their wisdom score is higher than ours.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we always look for those who have excellent insight. It's on brand for us. You post and comment about game concepts that come to you. What is it like to have an idea, to see the other ideas that come around it, and then see how it evolves into a game concept? What's that process like?
It's really strange. Well, for me, I realized in my game design process that a lot of it is about visualization.
Mm-hmm.
At least most of the time. I have an idea and I want to be able to see in my mind all of the pieces of it working, either at the table where I'm visualizing people actually playing it, or the story that is being told. Like if I can get my mind into the narrative fiction and like explore that world, if I can see the people like living and breathing and moving, then I know that I'm working in the right direction. Otherwise, there are more parts that I'm like, okay, I kind of need to figure out more about how to get this static image to be moving and like living.
You posted a very intriguing idea on Twitter this morning about mech jam plot armor.
Yeah, plot armor. I just finished writing that game.
You finished writing it already?
Yeah, I was in bed this morning and I came up with the idea, and then I figured out all of the mechanics, and then I got out of bed.
So is this
and I
like
wrote
a 1-page game, like a sort of like a honey bear? What's it called?
Honey Heist?
Honey Heist?
Honey Heist, yes. Is so like how that's a 1-page document that you can quickly, or did you like how much did you do this morning?
I just wrote it. It's
No big deal. You know, just wake up, roll out of bed, knock out an RPG, you know.
so the thing that's interesting about it is that once a lot of the actual writing process goes on in my head, and I hear a lot of other designers kind of say the same thing. Once everything's figured out, like it's legitimately just writing it down. There's a difference between like writing the game and writing the game down. When I wrote it in my head this morning because I was like, what would I want my sad mech game to be about? There's really, this time it was more conceptual. There were like a few images in my head, but the concept that I was pointed towards was that it has to be sad, and there has to be mechs, and I watched plenty of mecha anime.
There's no shortage.
True. And I decided that with this process, what links into that core concept? I was recently speaking with a friend of mine who's also a very well-known, amazing designer. And we were talking about how a lot of designers don't understand how to work with like the core of the game. And being able to know what that core is makes it a lot easier to go, oh, I want everything that I make about this game come into that core. Like all rivers lead to this ocean. And so I knew that with this game, I wanted to make it so that your character, the protagonist, becomes more aware that they have the abilities that a protagonist does, and that's really just in anime and in most stories, the protagonist is technically invincible because until the end of the story, we have to stick with them.
It's almost like they have plot armor or something.
Yeah. So this is the discovery of your character realizing that they have plot armor by going through
So interesting.
these like super nearly impossible or completely impossible situations that happen in a lot of mech anime. So they're like, once you start writing, because it's a one-player game, once you start writing out like what your character is and all that yada yada, there are 2 tables that have what happens to your character and what happens to your armor, because your mech is called armor, plot armor, haha.
Right.
What happens to your mech in the particular episode that you're on. There are 32 episodes in this game. But yeah, because the anime numbers of episodes are pretty specific. And mech anime
Is there also a roll table for an OST theme?
So it's 32 episodes, but you don't play through every episode. I based this game off of There's No Way Out of This Arena, which is my favorite 2-player game, where you and another person, you have a health amount, and then you roll, and you move through that health until the end, where then you die in this arena because you're like this warrior. And so I just kind of flipped it so that you have 32 episodes, and you roll a d6, and let's say you're on episode 1 and you roll a 4. You write episode 1, and then your next entry will be episode 5. You roll a 6, and then your next episode is going to be 11. So you have these time skips where you can talk about all the changes that have happened in that time, and you describe the things that have happened based on the table that you rolled on. So it says this happened to the protagonist, and this happened to the mech. So it could be that the protagonist unlocked a transformation, and now the protagonist turns into super protagonist, and
Right.
Your mech spoke to you, and those can be the 2 prompts that you have. So you can be like, oh, well, the mech spoke to me in this time where everything was absolutely wild. There were tons of mech enemies around us, and we were definitely going to die. And then my mech spoke to me, and it spoke straight into my soul, and then I transformed, and it made me the greatest mech pilot ever to exist. And you can write that story.
As long as the mech isn't your mother, that's the most important thing.
No.
I did not put that in.
You don't want the mech to be your mom. I've seen that. It doesn't turn out good. The whole world turns to jelly. Yeah, no, I mean, mech RPGs, mech games, mech animes are one of my personal theses. I love anything mech. I actually did a hack of, what was it? It was, I don't know if you've ever played it before, but it's a little mech game built around Legos, Mobile Frame Zero.
Oh, I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, I did a hack of Mobile Frame Zero to give it a character building mechanic once, and a little bit of a progression system. And so I've played around with the idea of mechs too. It can get, without a lot of abstraction, it can get really
Crunchy?
Battletech is a good example of where mech can go if you're really trying to get all the details in. But it seems like this is more, you're just going for more of the narrative bent of the storyline, the arc that goes through, the emotional core, rather than trying to actually figure out the sort of mechanical interactions between giant robots, which, arguably probably the safer route for your sanity's sake.
Definitely. Being that it's a jam and I wanted to make a short game, and most of the time I don't focus on the elements of like heavy mechanics outside of like thinking and processing things. So
yeah, because it's the mechs are a metaphor anyway, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, the mechs are the industrial complex or your mom. They're not really giant robots, and the fights between them don't particularly matter most of the time. It's the emotional core and like how your sad robot pilot is made more sad.
Or less sad, maybe.
Well, generally speaking, that hasn't been my experience. Obviously, that's a very interesting experience going into an idea in the morning and then hammering out in the middle of the day. You don't get there without having done this a few times in the past. How is it that you first got into the design of games? What was it that made you jump into that arena?
Design pretty much comes with playing games these days. Actually, for a long time, I guess.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think that's
say
fair.
that's true.
Chris Perkins was in Dragon Magazine when he was like, what, 18?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
A lot of games have, you know, a dungeon master, a GM, a facilitator, a MC. In those situations, people are all involved in bringing the game to life, and a lot of that is actually designing how the game functions for your group. Some games have really strict rules where you can just follow step by step, and there isn't as much room there. But most games turn you into a designer real quick.
What is it about a concept what makes a concept gameable?
Well, how much you care about it? It's probably the answer there.
Yeah, that would definitely be important. It's real hard sitting there writing about mechs if you don't give a hoot about mechs.
Ooh, it me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
There's a kind of complicated inner system as to if a thing is important to you, regardless of what it happens to be. Like, for example, Mutants in the Night is not a superhero story, the game that I wrote. Long game, I should say.
That
I wrote.
just passed 400 plus purchases. Is this correct?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Nice wingman there.
I try.
Yeah, that was a cool milestone to have. There are a lot of places in design where sometimes we think we're designing one thing and we're really designing another. And through that process of design, we often find out a lot more about what we really want to be there on the page. And again, this is in the more general sense and not just like this system. Because understanding if you want to make a game that is about intimacy, that there are a lot of particular things that you can do to get there. The settings can be vastly different. You can be in space. You can be in a fantasy world, like an old tokenist fantasy. You can be time travelers. It doesn't really matter in that way when you're at that level. What really matters is how does everything that you do in this game pull into that particular thing? And it could turn out that this story about intimacy that you're thinking about could really be about, like, I specifically wanted to make a game about queer love. Like, that could pull down through the process of bringing you closer towards what you really want out of a game. So everything that follows after that, like the system that you choose to use or hack or build, and the moves that you choose for people to have, the dice mechanics and all that, can lead into that particular thing. So finding what the core reason is really helps figure out, like, is this idea that I have worth making a game for on a personal level?
You, over the course of designing it, kind of narrow that focus so you know, or would you say that the thing that you were going after in the beginning is the thing that you get to in the end?
For me, it's mostly the thing that I started out with is the thing that I get at the end. But that's because I don't do a thing unless I know what I want.
Haha.
It's a good plan.
Yeah.
I would say I don't do that myself.
Yeah, whatever way that people do things, totally valid. For me, it's that I have a need to tell a particular story, and I need to know that all the decisions that I make ahead of time work towards that goal. And some people can do the reverse. Some people, have their super sideways, backwards calculations and they get there. But for me, it's like if I was building a car, that like I will start with the engine and the shell of the car, and then make it so that every single thing runs towards making this engine run the absolute best that it can. So that every time I go through the game, I go, okay, is this boosting the engine? Is this accenting the engine? Is it doing this and that? And as like I connect those things, it becomes this, with mutants specifically, it became this layer of, oh wow, I'm really doing these particular things well because they were my only focus.
So that maybe helped you trim away the excess, helped you find the real heart of the mechanics that you were trying to get at.
somewhat like it highlighted my focus. It it
Okay.
made me go, oh well, I can make things much more powerful and boisterous because these are the only things that I care about.
You've talked a little bit about your personal experiences. You know, you've let others know that you identify non-binary. Do you think that that colors the sorts of stories that you want to tell? Do you think that sort of is important in your game design? And where do you incorporate it?
Oh, that's a good question. I really like making it so that there is space for people to insert themselves,
Hmm.
because a lot of it comes down to me knowing that I have like these large facets of myself. When on the designing side, I want to make sure that everyone can insert themselves, and that because I think there's two levels to it. You can have it so that it's open and so anyone can be there, but you also have to make it encouraging for people to exist in that space.
Okay.
Because if you're not making it comfortable to be in that space as whatever you want to be, then you're not actually giving people a way to an easy way to insert themselves. So you either have to be specific or be super open. With mutants, I decided to just be super open by saying, here's a lot of culture from a lot of people that have these overlapping interests and some specific interests. And thereby it is easy for you to go, oh, this is very queer friendly. This is very non-binary friendly. This is friendly to all of these
Hmm.
different marginalized groups. In my personal play, I play non-binary characters a lot because if I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it? You know, that's the way that I kind of see things.
Yeah.
And I feel like bringing in non-binary characters helps people in games and then in their personal lives like kind of understand at least being a part of the same community as or friends with non-binary people a little bit easier. And just having that representation is cool because I hope that somebody watches a video and is like, oh, that non-binary person is playing a non-binary person, and so there is space for me to also do the same.
I have friends who, when they started getting into tabletop role playing, they would make characters that were not the gender that they presented as. And I think it helped them sort of come to a new understanding of their gender and their identity, whether they, changed it or whatever. Do you think that role-playing games can help people get a new perspective or learn more about themselves in that way?
Definitely. I know a good number of people who discovered that they were trans through playing tabletop role-playing games. I ended up learning much more about being non-binary trans through knowing a bunch of people in tabletop, being exposed to like much more language and
Hmm.
community. Same with being queer, finding other Black people in this space, especially ones who were trans, non-binary, queer. There are a lot of opportunities there because we are inserting ourselves into a space with friends where it is safe to explore those things. And so, yeah, we're going to have more people who are more aware of their own sexual orientations and genders, and etc. Because there are a lot of games that explore those things or have opportunities to even test the waters a little bit.
And the more you get positive feedback that it's okay, then you can delve even deeper, is what I've seen.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I agree that like following people and going out and seeing more individuals who are different from you, who have different lived experiences than you is really helpful. One thing I've found really great that you've been doing, Dungeon Commander, is you've been actually linking to different people each day
Oh,
of
yes.
Black History Month and drawing attention to maybe people without as many followers and guiding people not only to what they do, but also their Patreons and places you can support these individuals. I thought that was really cool. And it's definitely given me a few new people that I can follow and support as well. So I really think that's awesome.
Yeah, that whole thing, it comes from two things really. In that, one, community is wildly important to me. I have learned through the people I've met through tabletop, and it's been accented by all of my past experiences, that people are like the most important thing in existence. And a lot of the time, with going through the efforts of being a marginalized person, we don't have a lot of avenues where we have the authority to bring ourselves higher for people to help each other, for us to have opportunities to get each other in front of the places where you can get jobs or have your work recognized or even just be heard. And so when things started really ramping up with Twitter and my Discord and just all the attention, I just continuously remind myself that the purpose of having people listen to me is to have those people listen to the people who taught me, who made me better, the good people in my community, spreading the money around to people who need it, people who deserve it. And the majority of what I do on Twitter, as you said, is just highlight these people. And a lot of the like tweets that you're seeing and things, like I do some, but a lot are me retweeting other people who are doing the same thing and who are continuing to put people out there who maybe I don't know or that I can get to know. Those opportunities are what's really special about it all. So it's the being a bridge rather than being like a drawbridge, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, as they sort of start to establish their place in a domain, they become a little scared, like, oh, if I advertise others, you know, maybe they'll take away what I have and I'll reduce my own position. But it's like, no, you know, the more you build others up around you, you create this sort of community that can help and support each other. This month alone has definitely been eye-opening for me about how much of a daily struggle just existing can be for people who are you know, people of color, people with the LGBTQ background. Like, I've been listening to Christina Ariel going on each day. Something comes up, you know, something that you wouldn't think about or maybe you don't see, but it's just like, it's Black History Month and every day there's been something for her. It's been really eye-opening. Like, is this what every single day is like? Wow. Right.
And that expansion continues on. Like, I've learned more about the disabled community than I had ever known before.
Okay.
And have become a little less ableist throughout it all. And I'm continuing to work on that. And that spreads to my community and what I allow and don't allow. And like,
so who is it that you followed that started getting you really aware about the, you know, the disabled community?
Definitely Cherry Ray.
Okay.
They're another non-binary person who we met through Tabletop. We were playing together in Scum and Villainy on Ash McGowan's stream. Ash McGowan, bless you, I love you.
Shout out Ash McGowan. We'll definitely retweet them as well.
One of the greatest designers of our generation, easily. And Cherry Ray is a disability advocate, and they work in video games mostly, doing tons of panels and and the amount of work they do is pretty ridiculous because they're always traveling and doing talks and panels and helping major businesses like Xbox and stuff do better with their accessibility options for their games and their controllers, and working with the disabled gaming community, and of course then representing people beyond. And it's constant.
Yeah, I saw the Super Bowl ad that Xbox did about accessibility in gaming, and it seems like it's a topic that's been coming up a little more lately, probably because of advocates like Ash.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who are doing the work, and it's like, there's a lot to absorb between going through all of these communities and understanding what they need and how to respect them best. But just like with the things that we work hard on to understand and that we care about, there's enough time and effort to learn about those things and help boost those things as well.
Yeah, and I think my friend Maz once said is that, you know, you should be looking at the people you follow and making sure that they don't all look or sound just like you, and that helps a lot to learn every day.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to take that advice, and I've definitely expanded my follow list in some new directions and gained a lot of incredible people that I really respect. Yeah, it's amazing. Follow people on Twitter. It can be a good service. Twitter, it can be a good service.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Follow people and block people.
Well, that's the can, right? It can be.
Do those two things.
DC, what would you say are, let's say, the 3 most positive behaviors and actions that can help make the TTRPG community a healthier and more creative place, especially for diversity?
Oh, well, the absolute number one, and this is a really hard one because this is something that is just, it's in society and it's a big one, is to actually, when moving aside, move aside so that the person behind you can surpass you. I don't think it's stated very well often, and that people are like, oh, make space for others. And that is assumed to be in the way that we've been seeing it in tabletop and in other places, to go, oh, well, I have a table of, let's say, 5 white cis het dudes. I can, like, in my next one, open up a seat for, like, a black woman.
Yeah. I've seen that.
As that translates, that seems to be, oh, like, I made a space, and now this person can play, and the good-hearted people are, like, ask them what kind of stuff they want to do, and, have a good old time. That's kind of an opener, That's the bare minimum, really. That's just going, okay, well, I am cool with playing with these people, but really it's diving deep into, what do you want to do? What do you want to play? Do you want to GM? Do you have other friends that you want to play with as well? How can I give you the skills or resources in order for you to do what you want to do in tabletop? And if that person goes off and becomes great at whatever they want to do, because you went, okay, I want to move all these things that I want out of the way and do my best to actually give this person what they want or what they need out of this community, I am then doing what everyone kind of says they want to do, is they want to be open and they want to be helpful and they want to support marginalized people. But support is really not enough. I think support isn't a good word to use in the way that we define it today. I think it really is moving aside to let others either honestly surpass. Like, people deserve the opportunity to surpass you.
Stepping aside. I mean, it seems so simple, but at the same time, just thinking about it now, it's like, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. There's not many times where people just like, okay, here's a person of color and I'm giving them complete control.
Right.
Yeah. It's usually like, here's one seat at our table. All right, we did it.
There's always more. It's hey, would you like your own show? Instead of going, you can just be at this table, or even bring a lot of people of color at that table and still have like a white GM who picks the game and who does all that. Let people be in control as much as they want to be. And like in a Discord, there can be a channel where, yeah, it could be all one particular group to feel safe. What about giving them their own Discord, telling them how do I run this Discord? And if you want to, you have the opportunity to do the same thing. I can hand you whatever I know, and you can go on from there. A lot of it is people's privilege shows up at the line of, will you let this person stand beside you or even above you? Because if you're okay with this person being like an equal human being to you, there are tons of people who are above you in the positions of power. And some of them we're not okay with, and some of them we are. But if this is a person that you like and respect, and you want them to have opportunities, why does that opportunity stop where you are instead of letting them go as far as they can? Because if it stops where you are, that's still a prejudice. That's you not wanting someone to have as much privilege as you, or more privilege, or more even opportunity, I should say, than you. And so that is the place that tabletop can begin to inspect. Oh, we're just hiring like consultants sometimes and freelancing more people of color. Why aren't you hiring more disabled tabletop writers or designers? Why aren't you hiring more of these people? Why aren't you letting them move up through your companies, etc.? Because that's what
reminds me a little bit of the glass ceiling concept with women in the workplace. And there was, it's almost like there was a line above which women couldn't attain because the decision makers above them were not giving them the opportunities, probably out of this fear of not wanting to be surpassed or, seeing as on equal footing with, women. And I think it might be a little bit similar to that.
It is exactly that. And
It seems a lot like a natural byproduct of that whole sort of mentality of like equal employment opportunity, where you're like, we need to hire a certain percentage of each ethnicity, and then we will have fulfilled that requirement. And it's like, it's great to hire them, but then are you promoting them? Are you advancing them? Are you giving them
Are
the
you
opportunities
supporting
at the top?
them with the knowledge
Yeah.
and the resources that they need to do what they can up to their potential, whether that's this line or a line above it or a line above it or a line above that?
Wow, that was point one, and already my
Yes,
mind is
indeed.
blown and exploding into possibility. Okay, well, let's see. Let's see what point two holds.
Two and three aren't as powerful. I rolled with the
Yeah.
number one is there because it's the first thing we should do.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's number one because it's very important.
Yeah. The second one is to give space for speaking, and that comes in a lot of different ways. There's something that I realized, and this is something that on Twitter, for example, if someone says something that's really important and that is very strong, a lot of the time, like quote tweeting and adding your own little thing, it's that particular thing happens in so many different places. It's that this person has said a thing, and you can promote them in the thing that they said and let them be the focus of everything. Or you can quote tweet it and say, oh, here's like what I have to say. You can just be like, oh, this is really great or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do this. It's something that I'm trying to stop doing.
Yeah.
And it's only because
I have definitely been guilty of this, and I'm trying to do this less, where it's like you see somebody say something funny and then you want to say something funny and reply to it. And it's like, maybe it's okay just to let them be funny and not have to have your clap back. But even more important, when they're saying something important, maybe it's better just to be quiet and elevate their voice.
Exactly.
This is real. Oh man, that hits me right in my heart, because I definitely do this.
I think it's a thing that, I mean, we all do it because in the situation where someone is being funny, you can collaborate. You can add your own thing. You're not like, it's not so important that you're taking away the voice of like this person. In a space where it's like, okay, we need to be listening, and this is like real serious, and we need to be elevating by letting these people's statements stay on their own. That's a space where it's like, okay, well now I need to become conscious of this thing and stop getting in that way. And how that broadens from just like Twitter is marginalized people should be able to have these spaces where they can communicate and they're not overshadowed by the majority, by the organization, whatever it happens to be. And so, for example, at let's say PAX Unplugged, I was there last year, and there are a couple of diversity panels that went on there, and they were in this kind of tinier room next to this really big room, and in the way back of this giant convention. That if people are going to panels, yeah, they'll totally be there. It's easy to find. But overall, it's this thing that's like way shoved out in the back. There isn't an opportunity to speak to the people at large. There's often a lot of times where panels even will have people on them that don't even need to be speaking. For example, if someone is running a panel across the United States at all of these different places, it's interesting that we have, if it's, let's say it's about diversity of different types, like LGBTQ diversity or diversity in people of color or disabled diversity, that we don't give more spaces and highlight more people from those areas who can make it. And we focus more in on specific people who are, instead of being facilitators to uplift other people's voices, more so can like get in the way. They can guide things more towards their experience rather than letting the experiences of others flourish, and giving a space for people to speak and then letting them speak.
It's that classic problem at a diversity panel of like a white cis hetero guy as the like center figure, the like question asker. And it's like, that seems like it's going to slant things in a weird direction.
Yeah, and all of the questions that are going to be asked are they're not going to dive deep into the experiences of the other marginalized people. It's usually going to be within the comfort level of that particular person. And that happens a lot in various spaces. We need to go beyond your comfort level and say, hey, say everything that you want to say without putting on this addendum of, well, my experience, or like a lot of the time, there's repercussions for being able to say what you want to say, because sometimes the things you want to say affect or come from the people who are in this position of leadership, who are holding you back from your opportunities. Those situations are real common, and there are a lot of people, especially people of color on Twitter and tabletop, who say very little of the things that they really want to say because the power is skewed heavily in one direction, or people will co-op whatever they're saying to be whatever they want it to be, or even just constantly commenting and asking the same questions over and over again. And that's it's this form of like draining abuse. So that's a big thing that needs to kick it. Money. People don't like to talk about money a lot because a lot of us are heavily left-leaning, and capitalism involves lots of money, and people with a lot of money tend to suck.
Here and there.
But
Yeah, Notch.
Uh-oh.
I'm just roasting Notch, don't worry.
that's fair.
He's rich, he can take it.
Being able to actually put your money where your mouth is, because there are tons of people out there who we are in a luxury market, and I think that we commonly have in the indie space this concept that like there's no money out there for us. It's like, oh well, everyone's passing around the same $5, and I'm like, that is true. That's us passing around the same $5. But there are a lot of other people who are buying our games, who are buying bigger games, smaller games. Those people are spending their luxury dollars to give to us, and we spend them on each other. And so there are opportunities for people to go, you know what, I can give you $10 on Patreon, because although that seems high compared to people usually giving $1 on Patreon, $10 is 2 coffees out of my entire month. Yeah. And I have like 69 coffees. Nice. I have 69 coffees.
Ooh, 69. Nice.
Nice.
Like every month, I can just make that 67.
Absolutely. I've
deal.
definitely been in that situation before where it's like, oh, should I support this person? Well, yeah. I mean, like, I can give up a Subway sandwich.
Right. And so a lot of these people who are like, yes, I want to support creators and I want to like take part in all this stuff, really need to break down that barrier of like, okay, it's nice that you're giving us all like $1 a month, or you're subscribing on Twitch, which gives us $2.50, or you're buying the game, which we get various percents of between 10 and 30, 40, actually I should say between 90, 80, and 70. There's a point where you have to think about how much money you have and can give, rather than what people are giving, and matching that culture or matching that system that seems to have built itself there. Because I'll give you an example, and this is a part of what's been going on with my whole quote-unquote crusade, that in different contexts, people will give different amount of money, so with no questions asked. And on Patreon, people will give you $1 because most people give $1. If you have tiers and your lowest tier is $5, now $5 is the base. And if you have 10, 15, and 20, those amounts are no longer strange, or you don't question them. On itch.io, where I sell my game, and that's where I am trying to lead all of the people to. If a game is $10 and you buy it for $10, a little screen pops up and says, hey, tip the creator, and it says like 5, 10, 15. And in the context of 5, 10, 15, you're like, oh, 5 is the lowest, I'll give 5. Or like 10 is the medium, I'll give 10. And so within that context, we're no longer thinking, oh, that's so expensive. We're ranging it immediately by going, oh, well, like $5 is nothing, right? In the context of 10 and 20. So you hit that.
Yeah, that's definitely real. Like the psychology of like, if you present a $1 option, most people will take it. Like you have to kind of value your own product enough to say, maybe $1 is not fair for what I've put in.
And not just your product, right? The product of everyone who's creating at that level, at that kind of product.
or even just establishing a base value for our work, figuring out the minimums. What are we comfortable with having as our minimums? Because as we move across these different spaces, I tell people about 50% of the people who bought Mutants in the Night overpaid. They all tipped at least $5. I think maybe one person tipped $1 more. They all tipped at least $5. The rest are most of them are $5, some are $10, some are more. And a lot of people worry about how they're going to price their game and if people are going to buy it and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, mine is just one experience. That's true. It is anecdotal. But I implore people to go talk to others in the community about their experiences on different platforms, not even just selling games, but on Patreon and on drive-thru and etc., about how they end up getting money. And we should be, to make this community better, and to make it more inclusive and to give people more opportunity, we need the funds to be able to make our games what we want them to be. And when we make them what we want them to be, we have more of a portfolio, we have more experience, we have more tools to move forward in whatever way we choose. So, money.
Yeah, it's real. And you were talking about your preferred service is...
itch.io. Itch.io.
itch.io.
itch.io.
itch.io.
I know DM's Guild takes a pretty nasty cut.
30 to 40%.
Yeah, they're... I think that cut is kind of crazy.
Quite on the crusade to move people to... I mean, itch.io is one option, but it's... From what I know, it is the best option. They're not paying me or anything. They should be, but they're not paying me or anything.
Your ad here. That's our catchphrase.
There's this space here, after all that I've said, that itch.io doesn't have a base market that is the race to the bottom that I see on drive-thru RPG. Drive-thru has a lot of history that has led to this pretty bad situation it's in, and the website is not nearly as helpful. And I say this not as drive-thru, you suck and you shouldn't sell there. I say that as, hey, drive-thru, you could be a lot better. Because it is a valuable tool, and so is DM's Guild. Itch.io doesn't have a set market value in people's minds in the tabletop space because it's very, very new to us. And so when we charge our products at reasonable rates, and we have these opportunities for the platform itself to help value our games and our work, that marketplace value and the way that it is established can be a foundation for us to change the way that we participate in market value as tabletop products and start going, hey, we can price this at a reasonable rate so that we can pay people reasonable rates so that we can make reasonable profits and then actually be able to do the things we want to do, whether that be in your personal life as a tabletop designer, otherwise.
Yeah, I know drive-thru RPG is kind of known as the place with free PDFs, pay what you want, which is not a sustainable business model for anybody, except for, I guess, drive-thru RPG.
What they have over everyone else, what really makes drive-thru shine, is that depending on the type of content you create, you can have a lot of people experience your work. Are you going to have a lot of people pay fairly for your work? Probably not, in my opinion and experience, which isn't just me. I talked to a lot of people and we share numbers and it's not great. But yes, more people can experience your work.
People deserve to get paid. I mean, at the end of the day, people deserve to get paid. It's not like they're asking for exorbitant amounts, but people do deserve to get paid for what they've put in. And a service that capitalizes on people undervaluing their work is not one that we should be advocating. So itch.io, check it out.
Speaking of being paid for the skills and experience that you have, DC, I've heard you are currently looking for work. What kind of work would you love to get? We want to make that connection for you if we can. We probably can't, but we'll put it out there.
All the respect. Ideally, I'd really like to be writing. I would like to write stories. I would like to write lore that I'm interested in. Narrative design is cool. Character design is cool. Those are the big ones that I'm most interested in. It's a tough nut to crack into. But, I mean, if there's any work out there that doesn't drain my soul and pays me benefits, hit me up.
Nice.
The struggle, yeah.
The struggle.
Beyond that, what are some things that you're currently... Where can people follow you? What are some things that you're currently making that you're excited about? Just go ahead and pitch your...
Again, I am DC. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, Ko-Fi, Dungeon Commandr, with no E in Commander. Right now, I mean, if you haven't heard about it, I highly suggest you go check out Mutants in the Night. It is the big title that I released recently. It's my first game, my first complete game.
And there's a live play on, is it Encounter?
On YouTube. Because
on YouTube.
It was on my channel. Yeah, just type in Mutants in the Night. It'll show up. And in a couple days, or actually by now, it's probably out and in the world. The game that I created, Plot Armor, it's a part of the Sad Mech Jam, which has a lot of amazing games in it from some incredible designers that I am a big fan of. And so go check those out and keep up with me on Twitter because there is always a lot going down, and I will always be providing you with some amazing people who are bringing forth their best work, great thoughts, and who you can help support so that they can get to where they deserve to.
Thank you so much to Vinswept. Oh, nope. Thank you so much to our guest, Dungeon Commandr, for being on the show first and most important. We really do appreciate this conversation has already given me some ideas about how we can do things differently internally in the future, and I'm sure the people listening have also felt inspired by it, because I don't think you could not feel inspired by listening to this conversation. And thank you to Vinswept for our intro and outro music. Thank you to Amy T. Falcone for our faces. Thank you to our listeners for putting up with us. And if you can, follow us on Twitter at InsideCheckPod, and do the whole matrix and algorithm thing. Give us a like and a review on iTunes, whatever helps the algorithm be happy with us. And in general, thank you for showing up. This
was
Insight
Check. Answering your cues from our collective age. Woo!
No, listen, I'm trying to phase that out.
I figured you were.
It's terrible. Our guests have to hear our stupid slogan.
It's our tagline, though.
Vaccinate your children.
Vaccinate our new tagline.
Jay.
Vaccinate your children.
That's how you increase your wisdom score.
It's not related, but it is useful.
It's also the good thing to do.
Generally on this show, we do questions. So we don't do questions.
Thanks, Jay.
So I'll re-enter that conversation without saying do this time.
Good luck.